Well, good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be with you today. You'll be pleased to know I'm not going to make a long speech. I'm just really going to say a few things because much about has already been said by Michael and Minette, I would completely share. But I'm going to spend a bit longer critiquing the agricultural bill, which at the moment is the thing most uppermost in my mind because I spend a lot of time on the committee. And we will be seeing what happens when it comes back in terms of the report stage and the second and the third reading. Now, this matters because it affects, of course, all your livelihoods, but it, more than anything, is about the way we will set our agriculture in train for the next 30 years, because that's how long we anticipate this piece of legislation will take. And it matters because, of course, it is the way in which we see, whatever happens with Brexit, the post-Brexit world in one respect, but also the way in which our whole agricultural industry is going to rely on what happens. But let me just start with something which is crucial, and that, of course, is climate change and how our future agricultural industry will be affected by that. Now, I think it's very important we learn from what happened this year with the drought and what happened as a result of what I saw with my baker, who produces very good quality bread, but was unable to supply the wheat for a number of months. So he was really chasing around the world in how he could see where his wheat would come from. And we must learn the lesson from what that has taught us. I see also the way in which so many farmers were unable to get a second cut and what that did in terms of how they saw their funding arrangement being seriously threatened, and many talking to me about how their single farm payment was going to go towards paying for the extra cost of the feed that they would need over the winter. Thankfully, it wasn't as bad as we thought it might be, but it was a real wake-up call. So how does this come forward in terms of the agriculture bill that we are currently wrestling with? Now, it's good to see Michael in person. We spend a lot of time over the dispatch box, and I see, and you'll see in George Eustace tomorrow. To me, we have to make some real fundamental improvements to the piece of legislation that's going through. It's disappointing still that the government, and Minette has picked up on this, is not willing to give in terms of the difference between powers and duties. Now, just to explain this is very parliamentary language-wise, but it really matters. The bill is very long on powers, which is effectively a wish list of what we might want to happen, but very short on duties about what will happen. So we've made no apology for pushing the government, and will continue to push the government to put some duties into this bill. We failed, I have to say, so far at the committee stage, but we will have another go at report stage, and no doubt in the Lords, with so many eminent agriculturalists and farmers and people who have academic backgrounds as long as your arm, they will have a lot to say about the need to secure the future. And it will be about money. And we welcome the idea of these multi-annual contracts, but we need to see what the government is prepared to do in terms of putting some real money up front. We've made the point that we would want to keep the 3.2 billion because this is such a fundamental change to agriculture that we cannot see any way in which that can be done on the cheap. Now, again, the government have not committed themselves to that. The transition period from 2021 through to 2028, clearly that will overlap if the general election, whenever that may come, is up to 2022. We need to have security. You need to have security to know that that funding will be there. We may argue, and we will argue over the nature of what we mean by environmental payments, but the fact is we cannot shortchange yourselves because you need to know that there will be the funding in place. And the third and final part of the critique is, and again Minette has picked up on this, where is food in this particular agricultural bill? It is somewhere hidden behind the scenes. It needs to be up front. The relationship, which again has already been talked about, between health and food and the environment needs to be up there, really well spelt out in the legislation itself. It's too uncertain if we just leave it in terms of powers, but in terms of what we might want to happen. So our critique is very clear. We need to make sure that this bill is improved, that it is clear in terms of the funding that is made available, but also that agriculture is the centre point of an agriculture bill. It's great that the environment is so important, and we look forward to the forthcoming environment bill in due course, which the government has promised. But unless we're able to put agriculture central, as a central point to the agriculture bill, we would always be worried that this is going to lead to a race to the bottom and cuts where we cannot afford that. So this is an important time. I know the conference is about opportunity, but it's also about security, food security, but also security in the way in which we must make sure that this bill is fit for purpose. So I hope that you will be working with your representatives to make sure that they will support things that we would want to see. For example, Neil Parish, the chair of the Select Committee, has got a number of very good amendments down, which give you the knowledge that the food imports will maintain agricultural welfare and environmental protection standards. We will be supporting those. I hope that you will talk to your representatives about getting them to support it. This needs to be a cross-party piece of legislation. We've always made that point. So we'll be working with Michael to make sure that that is possible. But again, the government has to give as well as to argue its point of view, and we will be making sure, as the opposition, that that legislation is fit for purpose, and then therefore we will have the opportunities that both the previous speakers have made very clear are there, but without the bill being a good bill, that won't happen. Thank you for listening.